reading, and you'll see some wonderful thoughts about why the game, and even what some people think as the slow tediousness of the game, is really in Bart's mind way back when, and in mine, kind of the rhythm of a wonderful, wonderful pastime. And so anyway, enough about that. It was about as fitting a moment as I can imagine for any player, and specifically the most fitting for Joe. And I just thought it was one of the special moments in baseball that I've ever witnessed.
And what I love about this, we're talking here on Tuesday morning. The Twins have a press conference on Tuesday afternoon. We don't know what it's about yet. Theoretically, possibly, it could be about Joe Anastasi's retirement. I don't know that he was going to do it this quickly. But here, as we talk on a Tuesday midday, I would love it if this is it for Joe, because a guy who did deal with concussions, did deal with various ailments, would be walking away completely healthy after a perfect day. And you think back in recent Twins history, and the last we saw of Kirby Puckett on a field, he was bleeding. He got hit in the head by Dennis Martinez. The last time we saw Tony Oliva, he was limping. Herbeck was not at the top of his game when he left. He was beat up. Justin Morneau was not at the top of his game when he left. He still had concussions. I usually am in the camp, hey, if you can play, play. Don't let, our selfishness that we want to see you only at your best keep you from playing the game you love. But in this case, I think the ending was written so perfectly, why rewrite it?
I think that's a great point. I'll make a personal reference. I got the opportunity to retire after I had the opportunity to be able to make the decision whether I wanted to retire after we won the World Series in '87, and I felt like I could spend another year or two. People thought when I decided to retire, people were around baseball and around fans were telling me, "Boy, you should still be playing. You can still play." I mean, and baseball teams told me that, and in being interested in my playing for teams other than the Twins, and as I thought about it, that was the way I wanted to go out. I didn't want to. I could see a year or two was kind of it. I was 35 years old. We won the World Series on my 35th birthday in '87, and I could see it was another year or two, and it would be time for me to retire. And with people telling me I could still play, then I thought, well, then why would I do a 1 or 2 year tour around baseball and prove to everybody that they're wrong, that I'm done, right? And have people remember it that way. And so I decided to go ahead and leave it with on the field in Game 7, right? Joe has the opportunity to do that. He can still play. There's no question. But if he thinks that, and people will remember him as being still a terrific player, and if he sees it the same way, if he says, well, if not this year, it'll be 1 more year or maybe 2 more years, then after Sunday, after the year he had this year and after Sunday, I would say, why do that?
Right.
Just if you know, and so I when I look at decisions like this, and I do this often in my business, as a financial advisor and a portfolio manager for people, and when there's a decision about whether to sell a stock, for example, and because the market could go either way. And right now is a perfect example. We could be on the cusp of a correction. Who knows? So you don't really know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I often talk to people and say, let's look at the extremes, and which would you be the most dissatisfied with? Which would drive you the craziest? If we sell some and the stock continues to go up, if we were wrong about that, will that drive you the craziest, that you left some on the table? Or if you don't sell and the market corrects 15 or 18%, you lose, a lot of the gain that you made. Would that drive? Because we don't know what's going to happen. It may do neither of those things, but those are the extremes. Which will you be the least happy with? And let's not do that one. So I look at Joe And I say, what are the downsides of either? Well, if he retires, then the biggest downside is he's going to miss it so terribly that he needed to prove to himself that he couldn't play at the level he wanted to play at anymore, and so he should have given that more time. And that's the worst of it. Now the second worst would be only second worst because it's more unlikely that the Twins go deep into the playoffs next year and he's not a part of it. Well, that's gonna hurt him, and it's less likely, but it's still possible. On the other side of it, what if he keeps playing and the Twins have a miserable year and he hits 230 or 40 and he's away from his family again and his daughters are doing things that he misses, and what you're going to hate the most, and I kind of think that if I were Joe, this Sunday would have been it for me. That would be it, kind of like the World Series was it for me. I agree with you. It just doesn't get any better than that. And if he sees it as maybe one more year or 2 more years, then I have to look at the whole his career and Sunday and the year he just had and say, why do it anymore? Just go out absolute top.
By the time you hear this, Joe may have announced his decision. I was told that it might be a few weeks, but these things are unpredictable. But we're going to do some topics that are not based on Joe's decision, including next, let's ask the question, is Joe a Hall of Famer? First, we want to thank BerryCoffee.com. Also, thank our producer, Brandon Morton. And if you'd like to advertise with this program or anywhere on the network, which I think had about 150,000 listens last month, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. Also, if you would, download before you listen. It's a better listening experience. It's good for our business as well. Berry Coffee, BerryCoffee.com, a Minnesota company we've been telling you about. I'm looking forward to going out and trying their fresh Bull Run roast at their new roasting center. And I want to remind you of some of the equipment you can get. You can get all kinds of great products there. Coffee, tea, soft drinks, sparkling water, snacks. You can also buy coffee brewing equipment, espresso and cappuccino makers, food service, single service machines, and water and filtration services. So just keep in mind that whatever your needs, whether you're a business or an individual who really likes to have great stuff around the house, you can go to berrycoffee.com and check out everything they have to offer. Do you have anything you want to say about Steve Brehm and his business?
Well, the only thing that I will say is you mentioned the new roasting plant. The machine is on the West Coast. It's about to be put on a truck. We're talking maybe 3 weeks. And it'll be delivered and installed. And I was talking to Steve about what this thing can do. It's amazing. You can dial up, put in beans of, and I won't do this justice. We'll talk about this when we get out to the plant in a month or two. But evidently, you can dial up, in essence, the flavor that you want to create in a roast. And it tells you the amount of beans of this kind and this kind and this kind, and it tells you. I mean, you can just literally dial up a flavor of how you want the beans to come out and roast and pour that cup of coffee. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. BerryCoffee.com, great sponsor of the program, great local business. So I am working on a column. Again, this is another thing that people might have seen by the time they hear this podcast, but I think it's probably sometimes. One of the things I love about podcasts, sometimes these are better conversations than they are columns. And I started really looking at the numbers and trying to figure out if Joe would or should be in the Hall of Fame. And I have to admit, my gut reaction, as a million people have asked me the question the last couple of days, has been, I don't think so. It just off the top of my head. So, but you got to check yourself, right? So you got to do the research. You got to go back and start over. And I realized that I was probably giving too much weight to the end of his career, watching him be a first baseman who was dealing with ailments, who wasn't driving the ball anymore, was affected by the ballpark and shifts. And so I tried to wipe my brain clean, which doesn't take very long, and start over. And you start comparing him to other catchers. You start comparing him to what he produced as a catcher versus Hall of Fame catchers, what he produced as generally a catcher against other players who played mostly catcher but moved around a little bit. You start looking at the dominance for, however you want to phrase it, either the first 6 years of his career or the first 8 to 9 years of his career while he's primarily a catcher. And then add in the last 5 years where he wasn't a catcher and he wasn't quite the same hitter. And he really starts reminding me a lot of Kirby Puckett in that he had about 8 to 10 years of absolute dominance, and then something happened and he wasn't that anymore. With Kirby, it was a complete drop-off. He couldn't play anymore. With Joe, it was a different position and a different hitting profile. But if you really look at historically what catchers have done, how Joe compares, I think there might be enough there to justify voting him into Hall of Fame.
There's actually no doubt in my mind.
Okay.
I mean, he's in for me. And the reason he is because of what you say about the first 8 years of his career. And I go back to my main criteria for Hall of Fame worthiness, and that is was a dominant player at his position in his era. Obviously, many of those who were will put up numbers that by themselves put you in the Hall of Fame. So, Jim Thome hit 600 home runs. He's in.
Right.
I mean, he's absolutely in. Somebody gets 3,000 hits, they're in. Now, most of the guys who get 3,000 hits end up playing 18 or 20 years. So it becomes a war of persistence as more so than 20 years of all-star caliber. I mean, there are only so many Henry Aarons out there, and Stan Musials and Ted Williams, those guys, but they're still Hall of Fame worthy because of a decade worth of highest level performance at their position in their era. And that's where I would put Joe to start with the conversation. And then I would just say this breaks down the barrier. He was a catcher that won 3 batting titles.
Mm-hmm.
One catcher in history has won a batting title, and that was in the National League, Ernie Lombardi.
Right.
And Joe is not only the only catcher in the American League to win a batting title, he won 3 as a catcher who was at the time also winning Gold Gloves. He's a remarkable talent that needs to be in the Hall of Fame because of those accomplishments. I just don't know what people would expect how you're not in the Hall of Fame if only one person in history has ever won a batting title at your position. You won 3 of them. I mean, that closes the subject for me.
And I agree with you, and I also know how voters think, and I know voters they try to look at body of work, and the first thing they go to is career totals, and that's where they need persuasion if somebody didn't reach 3,000 hits.
Right.
But that's where I think the Puckett parallel is so interesting. Let's get a little more into the Puckett parallel here. We do want to thank WhizKids.tech, WHIZKIDS.tech, Minneapolis, Minnesota-based business that has done very well acting as your company's chief technology ally. Go to WhizKids.tech /welcome to check out their business.
Hello, Minnesota sports fans. This is Michael Thanner, founder and CEO of WhizKids. WhizKids is a Minneapolis-based managed IT, hosted VoIP, and cloud services provider. Businesses today require fast response times, skilled support staff, clear communication, and technology recommendations that align with their business goals. At WhizKids, we do this each and every day with our clients. When you call into our help desk for support or work with one of our higher-level engineers on a complex issue, you'll find our staff personable and ready to roll up their sleeves to help you solve your technology problems. Reach out to WhizKids today to find out how we can help your business meet your technology goals. Visit us online at WhizKids.tech. That's WhizKids.tech. WhizKids, make it happen.
The Puckett thing is, everybody knows he's on pace to be a Hall of Famer, right? 2,300 hits, whatever it was, All-Star, 8 years in a row, whatever it was, Gold Gloves, Silver Sluggers, finished high in the MVP voting. We all know where he was headed, and then all of a sudden he wasn't headed there anymore, so people had to extrapolate. And with Kirby, they were willing to extrapolate. They were willing to say, okay, tragic ending to his career that he couldn't control, We know where he was going. He's going to end up with 3,000 hits and be an easy decision. Let's give him credit for being an ambassador. Let's give him credit for the World Series performances and being the best player on 2 World Series teams.